We continue with new criticism, and today we shall look at few features of new criticism, and then we shall move on to the various new critics and their concepts. So the first thing we did discuss, it's in the introduction, we did discuss how it came into evolution, the new criticism. It was greatly influenced by the works of, or the concepts of, Matthew Arnold, the Victorian critic. And then you have T.S. Eliot, who played a pivotal role, or who can be considered as the pioneer of new criticism. And you have I.A. Richards, who began with practical criticism in United Kingdom. So you have new criticism and practical criticism, or otherwise called the modernist criticism. Both are the same. They had the similar feature. So the features of new criticism, or the new critics, focused mostly on words. They focused only on words. Words were everything to them, nothing external. And they stressed on close reading. Now, we do not seek to understand the poet's personality through the poem, nor do we try to gain the insight into the socio-political history of the period in which the poet wrote the work. So rather, they focus only on the text. They focus on the structures, its form, how images are created, the choice of words, various figures of speech. All these were the ones that the new critics were concerned about. Nothing external to the text, nothing outside the text. Everything, according to them, it is autotelic. Now I shall be explaining what autotelic texts are. Autotelic is nothing but a text which has everything in it. It is all inclusive of everything, nothing outside the text. Now they consider text as an autotelic artifact, a complete thing, and it is independent. It has no connection with its author, nor the history or his intention, the author's intention. It is not dependent on the author at all, nor is it dependent on any of the historical contexts. Now, I would like you to turn to page 41 of your textbook, where you have, and I would like you to come to the first paragraph in page 41. Now, Raman Selden speaks of 3 reasons as to why they became popular. That is there in your text in the first paragraph, not the first paragraph, the second paragraph in page 41. One reason was that the southern agrarians, or the fugitives as you call it, of the Vanderbilt University, they critiqued the industrialization and materialism of the Northerners. Second reason was that they imitated Matthew Arnold, and tried to present harmony, unity, and transcendence in literature during a war-wrought period, that is the Second World War and its subsequent Cold War period. The third reason for its popularity was that poems are meant for all. It is not for a particular gender or class or nation, and therefore they were to be presented to an international audience, and hence shorter poems were much preferred, and especially the one that was more democratic in nature, that did not have anything to do with the common history. So for the new critics, what was important? The text was important. They urged the readers to focus their attention on the text, on the literary text, and nothing else. The life and times of the author, a biography, the external events, the socio-cultural context, all these were out. They were completely excluded by the new critics. I stress this just for you to understand it so that you will not forget. It's similar to the formalists. Okay, and now let us take a look at some of the important concepts of the new critics. And we shall first start with, I'm not going based on the order of your text, I'm taking it here and there. I'm just telling you about the concepts mentioned in your textbook. So once you have understood the concept, you can just read your text, you will understand, because whatever, it is nothing to do with outside the text. Whatever is being spoken in this video has a lot, or is in connection to your textbook. Okay, so it is there in your text, whatever I am speaking here, but I'm not going as per the order in the textbook, that's all. So anyway, if you come to page number 41, I have explained what new criticism is. Some of you did ask me, we find it difficult to understand when we open the text. We feel that the video and the text does not match. No, that's because you are not reading the text properly. That's the only reason. So if you read the text well, you will understand. Now, so for those people, page 41, I'm speaking the concept. I'll start, the first concept that I would start is with the intentional fallacy and affective fallacy. Intentional fallacy and affective fallacy are two concepts given to us by two important new critics, Wimsatt and Beardsley, and their concepts of intentional fallacy and affected fallacy were pointed out in their book Verbal Icon. Okay, so let's look at what intentional fallacy is first. Okay, so what is intentional fallacy? It's there on page 41, fourth paragraph. So intentional fallacy is a type of, what is fallacy? Fallacy is error, mistake in judging certain things. So fallacy is an error, and intentional fallacy. So what is intentional fallacy? Intentional fallacy is a kind of mistake that you make in trying to figure out the intention of the author. You're trying by reading a text, or by reading the author and his biography and his socio-historical context in which he has written, you are trying to focus your attention what the author might have tried to assert, or the author might have intended. Not just the socio-historical or biographical features, you not really judge him by that, you also judge him by the words that he uses. For instance, if I am to say, if I am to write a poem about the color black, okay, and you may have a feeling that the author or I had intended to speak about the melancholy of life. Maybe it is because I had written it during the pandemic, the COVID-19, that you intend to think that I have written this poem basing it on death, the terrible death that this pandemic had raged. So what if I had not meant about it at all? What if I was speaking about the color black as such? Or what if I was speaking about my fish, the Blackmore? I'm speaking about my fish, my pet fish, and I wanted to write a poem about it. So you cannot be at all in any way be able to understand the intention of the author unless and until he tells you that you had intended, or he had intended to write, or he intended to speak about that particular topic. Otherwise you will not be able to understand it. See, so what happened was, I intended to write a poem. My poem on black was about my pet fish Blackmore, and you, or my dog, it is black in color and I am fond of it. So you intend to think that I had written this poem basing it, or thinking, or basing it with the pandemic right now. So see the variation in your judgment, see how you misinterpret the text. So this is a concept that Wimsatt and Beardsley tried to tell the authors, warn the audience or the readers that if you are to try to figure out what the intention of the author is, you're going to end up in having a wrong judgment. There is a fallacy that's called that's an error, and it is called intentional fallacy. So fallacy, intentional fallacy, is a type or a kind of mistake that people make by deriving meaning of the text according to the author's intention from his biography and his situation. It is an error in interpreting it according to the evidence as per the intention of the author. We do not know what he intended when he wrote those lines. So if we are to say this is what the author intends through this work, we cannot in any possible way understand the intention of the author, because we are not present at the time when he or she is writing it, or he or she has not told you that he is intending to write or his poem was intended on this particular thing. For another example would be blue curtain. So one is the color black. Another example would be blue curtain. By the use, that's one thing that is mostly or commonly a very good example, because see, by the use of the word blue, the author might have not intended to write anything about sadness or melancholy. But when you read the poem about blue curtain, you intend to, or you think that the author may have said, or author may have intended to speak about the melancholy that has spread around him. The room refers to the author's or the writer's mind, and the curtain blue refers to the melancholy that has surrounded him. So what if the author never intended that? What if the author just intended blue curtain as of the new blue curtain that he has put in his room? What if it is not a very deep poem? So here again, it's difficult to judge a poet's intention. Another thing is, see, if you are to speak about Shakespeare, has written about Romeo and Juliet. When he wrote Romeo and Juliet, or Othello, or Macbeth, you cannot, Shakespeare may have written all this with an intention, with a different intention, which in the 21st century is very difficult for us to understand. We cannot say that, okay, Shakespeare meant this, because we cannot in any way, it is not humanly possible for us to meet him or try to figure out what he had intended. So intentional fallacy means an error or a mistake in trying to figure out what the intention of the author is. Okay, so the critics, the new critics, is totally against it, or especially Wimsatt and Beardsley. According to them, it leads to subjective interpretation. What you need is an objective interpretation. You cannot go in for a subjective interpretation. They believed that the meaning, the structure and the value of the text are all included within the text itself. You don't have to look at what Shakespeare may have intended or what the poet may have intended. You don't have to look at his biography or his details or the time in which he has written the particular poem. You just have to look at the poem alone, the structure or the language that the poet has used in the poem, the metaphors that he or she has used, the images used, the form in which he has presented the poem. That's all that you need and nothing more than that. Okay, so that is intentional fallacy. The text being autotelic and nothing beyond is required. So in the last video also we discussed something of that or similar to it. We spoke about Arnold speaking about objectivity. We also studied T.S. Eliot and the impersonality of the author. We did not study impersonality, of course. We did speak about impersonality of the author. So all this had a great impact on the new critics. So what is intentional fallacy? An error in trying to figure out or judge the poet's work based on the intention of the poet. We have completed intentional fallacy. Let's move on to the next concept given to us again by Wimsatt and Beardsley. That is affective fallacy. Let's just see opposite of intentional fallacy. If intentional fallacy is an error or a mistaken interpretation or a judgment, an error in judging the poem based on the poet's intention, affective fallacy is to do with basing a poem's value or basing a poem's judgment or judging a poem, an error in judging a poem according to the intention or according to the emotion of the reader. Okay, on the basis of the emotional effect the poem or the work has on the reader. It's an error in or supposed error of judgment on the basis of emotional effect upon the reader. See, when we try to judge a work based on the emotion of the reader, we tend to misinterpret the work, because basing it on the reader's emotion is not the ultimate value or indicator of the value of the work. It does not judge whether the work is good or bad. Like for instance, if I am to read a poem, I am depressed, I am very sad, I feel extremely sad, and I try to read a funny book so that it will help me forget my depressed state and it might uplift my mood. But does it really so? No. Do you think I'll be able to enjoy that book? I don't think so. And what if somebody is to ask me, did you enjoy the book, that particular book that you read? Was it funny? Because that person had already read it and he or she may have felt it very funny, and may have asked me to read it so that it would make me happy or feel good, I would not have been in that emotional state to have appreciated the work, and therefore I would not have found anything funny, or I would not have found anything interesting about the book. The reason is because of my emotional state of mind. And therefore, if you are trying to base or judge the poem, basing it on the reader's intention, or not reader's intention, reader's emotional state, then it can lead to an error in judging that poem. So that is affective fallacy. Now turn to page number 41. Come to the last paragraph, and any given reader may or may not respond to what is actually provided by the text itself. Readers' feelings or opinions about a text may be produced by some personal association from past experience rather than by the text. The new critics coined the term affective fallacy to refer to the mistaken belief that the emotional effects upon the readers constitute the text's meaning. So, Wimsatt and Munro Beardsley, they defined affective fallacy in an essay in 1946, stating it as an error of evaluating a poem by its effects, especially its emotional effects upon the reader. Okay, so according to them, both the text is autotelic, it is self-contained. Nothing is required external to the text. So you don't have to go behind the author's intention, nor do you have to think about what effect it has produced on the reader, or the emotional effect on the reader, to judge if a work is good or bad, because the text is autotelic. You don't have to base the judgment of a particular work or a poem on the intention of the author, nor on the emotional effect it creates on the reader. Okay, so with that we have completed one concept given by two concepts, that is given by Wimsatt and Beardsley. So that they were intentional fallacy and affective fallacy. Okay, now let's move on to the next critic and his work. Before we move on,